Hi, I'm Bryce Crittenden.
Hi, I'm Caroline Land, and welcome back to EPL's Overdue Finds.
Hey, Caroline, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Bryce. It's good to see you. It's been a while since we've recorded.
It has, yeah. We're recording this a few days before release of this episode. Typically, we plan a little bit better and try and record like a week or two. So, just the way recordings have worked out, I don't think we've actually recorded an episode in almost a month. So, we might be a little rusty today, but I think we're still going to deliver a really fun show.
I'm really looking forward to today's topic.
Yeah. So, speaking of today's topic, I don't really know how to best really describe it, except like, sometimes maybe you don't feel like yourself, or maybe sometimes you kind of feel like, you know what? I wish I was that person for a day because they've got it easy. Nobody's got it more rough than I do. So today, of course, as you saw from the title, we're talking about not just Freaky Friday, but the whole idea of like some of those fun body swapping comedies. Of course, it's been covered in a book before as well. And that's what we're talking all about today. So, Caroline, it's funny because we've talked about the process of putting together Overdue Finds episodes before on the show, and we'll meet every quarter and we talk about ideas. And this is one that came up, and we're kind of it was almost like a joke of an idea, kind of. We're like, yeah, that'd be kind of funny. Ha. And I was like, no, let's actually do this, right?
Like a lot of things in my life, it's a joke that then I took seriously, and thought that there was a lot to write about because we were talking about the idea of Freaky Friday, and also looking at the idea we've talked in the past about maybe doing an episode where I give you something that I love and you give me something that you're really familiar with, that we could like experience the other's tastes like that.
Yes.
And then we were talking about Freaky Friday, and I did a little bit of research after the episode because it was like, well, it's we like this idea, but is there enough here? And I, in about a half hour, I had a very long email that I sent to you
Yeah.
outlining all of the things that we could talk about today. And I think you were just like, all right, she clearly wants to do this. I'm just going to let her go.
I was
So,
like, I saw the email and I was like, this is happening. I only got
yeah,
like halfway through it
it
before I
had
was like,
footnotes.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, all that.
And really, I couldn't think of a better guest to have on with us today, official friend of the show. She was last on our 1996 Pop Culture Confessions episode. I don't really know if we'll be covering anything from 96 today, but welcome back, Holly Arnason from our makerspace at the Stanley E. Milner Library downtown. Holly, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Bryce and Caroline. It's great to be back on Overdue Finds.
So are you I assume you're a fan though of the body swapping genre that we're going to be talking all about today, right?
I'm not sure if I describe myself yet as a fan. I think I'm definitely someone who's open to this fandom. When you both first asked me, I was like, actually, I don't really know that much about body swapping, and I'd like to learn more. So I'm really here in the spirit of lifelong learning for this podcast and for this topic.
I should have sent you my email with with all of it laid out.
I'm sure it would have been extremely informative and almost encyclopedic in its scope, Caroline.
It was quite well done.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So before we get talking about all of our favorite body swapping titles, let's share some of our own recent overdue finds picks. Holly, what's something that's caught your eye lately?
Well, Bryce and Caroline, I have been really enjoying the series What We Do in the Shadows by Jermaine Clement and Taika Waititi. And I love the movie that is in our collection, and I've been loving the series as well. If you don't know what it's about, it's sort of a documentary about vampires living in the Staten Island area. And it follows them through their sort of day to day. It follows some of, the sort of, it really digs into some of the tropes, the familiar of the vampire, a lot of the rules about the vampire universe and existence. And so I've just been finding it really funny. of course, this time of year, it's nice. We've just been through October. It's nice to have something a little spooky, and a little bit, chilling. And I'd say overall, this is a very lighthearted series, and yeah, very funny. Some laugh out loud moments for sure.
Other official friend of the show, Kate Gibson, I know she's a huge fan of that series as well. And I think she'd brought it up on another episode and she was shocked. I still haven't seen it. I do know of the show. I've seen commercials for it, but yeah, I have not watched an episode yet, but it looks really fun though.
Oh, absolutely. And I'd really recommend starting with the movie that's in our collection and then moving into the series. They're a little bit different, but they're both really good. The movie, I think, is set in New Zealand and has some topical New Zealand humor. And then the series is set in the Manhattan area. And again, I think it's really fun, particularly if you've, kind of delved into the Van Helsing series or some of the more classic Interview with a Vampire type of things. They really have a lot of fun with some of those tropes.
Nice. Caroline, I also kind of have a spooky pick. So Caroline, how about you? Do you also have a spooky pick you can share?
I do. I was thinking that this is we're very much post October, I think, right now, where we're at. Mine is a book by Canadian author Tom Ryan called I Hope You're Listening. And it's a teen book about a teenager named Dee. She is the secret host of a true crime podcast that helps find missing people. She records it and distorts her voice so that no one knows who's really behind this really successful podcast. She's also the girl who a decade earlier was playing hide and seek with her best friend when her best friend was kidnapped, a crime that was never solved. Now another child in their small town has gone missing, and the new girl who's gone missing just so happens to live in Dee's old house. So she doesn't want to get involved, but she can't help it. She already is. There's also a new girl in town who's a huge fan of the podcast. What's her story? There's like a CNN style investigative reporter who's in town to cover the kidnapping, but also trying to unmask the podcaster. It's a really solid look at this investigative teen girl who reluctantly has to come to terms with her past.
Sounds really good.
Yeah.
I was just going to say the whole like podcast thing, it's really interesting because I've recently just been sick this last week, watching a lot of TV and a couple shows. One, the new Nancy Drew series. Two, Chucky, the new Child's Play series. Both of which feature characters who also have these crime podcasts. So it's like podcast true crime genre is absolutely everywhere.
Yeah, and this one delves in a little bit. The listeners to Radio Silence, which is the podcast, also are actively working to solve crimes. So there's that kind of forum armchair laptop detective thing, and when is it useful for maybe highlighting cases that the media is not paying as much attention to, and where does it actually start to confuse things or go in the wrong direction. So there's a little bit of that thrown in there as well.
Nice.
Yeah. So you said you had a spooky pick, Bryce?
Yeah.
What did you have?
Been watching a lot of TV movies lately, so you'll be getting lots of those picks from me here over the next few episodes of Overdue Finds. But yeah, my recommendation this week, it's a movie that came out this summer. Didn't get a chance to see it in theaters, but we now have it. Well, it's actually on order right now on DVD, so put your name down for a hold for the movie Old, and that's the new M. Night Shyamalan movie. So the premise of this movie is basically this group of people who are staying at this really nice resort end up going to a private beach for a day. Only once they get there, they realize that this isn't some ordinary beach. Soon notice is that everybody starts to age rapidly. Like some of these people going there have small kids. Before you know it, the kids are going through puberty, they're growing up. So things are definitely weird on this beach. So of course, as everybody's getting older, group of them try to figure out how they can get off this beach as soon as possible. But of course, it's not nearly as simple as that. And with, of course, this being an M. Night Shyamalan movie, you know there's a big twist ending. So you're watching this and you're trying to figure out what's going to happen with all of these people. Are they going to be able to get off this beach before they get too old? You, of course, will get those answers from watching the movie and, of course, what's going on with the beach. But there's some really great performances in the movie. Gail Garcia Bernal and Vicky Krieps are in it, and they play husband and wife who are going through some marriage difficulties with, and then, of course, they've got their kids with them. Rufus Sewell is in it as well, and he plays a physician. Lots of great performances. This movie is just kind of, it's not scary, but it is kind of just spooky and disturbing. Like, you know, just the fact that you go to this beach, you're having this wonderful time with your family, and pretty much you're aging 5 years every half an hour. It's something crazy like that. So and of course panic sets in. It's almost kind of stressful to watch in a way, but it's almost in a way where you really can't look away.
I have to tell you, I'm kind of stressed just listening to you talk about the movie. So I might have to like prepare myself when I watch it.
Yeah, it's a great popcorn movie. Cheryl watched it with me. She really liked it. She's not a person who really likes scary movies at all, but she really enjoyed this one. The one thing that's really cool about it too is it's actually based on a graphic novel called Sandcastle. It's by Frederick Peters, and we actually have it in our collection here at EPL. So you can just read the graphic novel, borrow the movie, or do both. I personally haven't read the graphic novel yet, but it's something that I look forward to reading just to see some of the differences. But I really enjoyed this one.
It makes me miss going to the movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I suddenly understand a whole bunch of memes on the internet from about like, I don't know, a year ago about an old beach. Like I just, now it's all clicking into place as you've described this, Bryce.
Yeah. No, it's a good one. I know his movies can kind of be polarizing. I think some people really love them or hate them, and I'm kind of I'm kind of in the middle with a lot of his movies. Some of his newer stuff has been really good, but this one I really enjoyed, and I think people will have fun watching it. All right, so let's talk about some Freaky Friday, a little bit of body swapping titles. So the best known body swapping story is probably, of course, Freaky Friday, a 1972 novel that's been turned into several movies. Caroline, I'm going to start with you. How familiar are you with this title, and probably the book as well?
Yeah, not so much in the specifics, but very familiar with the general. And by that I mean, like, I use Freaky Friday as a verb to mean when two people body swap, which as I'm saying it, I realize maybe doesn't come up all that often, but when I'm talking about it, it's like, oh, they Freaky Friday'd. And like that just there's an element of knowing what that is. I had not read the book originally. I had, I think, at one point seen the original 1976 movie starring Jodie Foster as Annabelle, but aside from a couple things, my main touchstone for Freaky Friday is the 2003 movie with Lindsay Lohan and Jamie Lee Curtis. That's really a movie that I really enjoyed. I like seeing that. I think the actresses do incredible work with this theme, and I mean, it's just peak 2003 in a lot of ways. So I have lots more to say about the movie, but I want to check in and hear kind of where other people started on their Freaky Friday experience. Holly?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm certainly familiar with the concept through popular culture, but as I mentioned before, coming on the podcast was my chance to really dig into the topic. So I took Freaky Friday out of the library and I watched the 2003 movie for the first time. Just like Caroline said, I think there were some amazing performances in it. I thought it just elevated Jamie Lee Curtis that much more for me. And I also borrowed the book, which was confusingly covered with a brand new contemporary cover that looked like, it maybe was published just a couple of years ago. So I kind of wondered about that because it is still the same text from the 1970 edition. And I didn't have a chance to fully read it, but I did do a little bit of skimming here and there. And I found it really reminded me a lot of those sort of teen or young adult stories from the 70s and 80s. Like Paula Danziger, for example, popped into my mind as I was reading it, just in terms of like the tone of the protagonist and the really kind of sharp and ironic humor in some of these books, as it's about teens relating and being at school and dealing with their parents. So yeah, this was my real first exposure to actual Freaky Friday, the canon, and I didn't dig in as deep as I could have. I think there's some other movies out there as well.
There are, and we have at least one other one in our collection, the most recent one, I believe, from 2018. But I so agree with you, Holly. The voice of Annabelle, and I believe that the novel Freaky Friday by Mary Rogers, published in 1972, is in the first person. It's Annabelle telling the story of how she body swapped with her mother. And she the movie has the 1976 movie that is more closely aligned with the plot of the book, really goes in on that, with Annabelle's voice, her perspective kind of on it's more about, I think, yes, it's mothers and daughters, but it's also like kids and adults. And in the movie, which I just want to point out has a lot more water skiing than I thought it would have.
So, quick side note on that.
Oh no,
I
this is going to be a main point.
so I did not watch the 2003 version. I watched the original 1976 version. Is there water skiing in the 2003 version?
No, and
No.
I believe that I read it's not present in the original book either.
Okay.
But in the 76 version, the Jodie Foster
Yeah.
version, a good 1/3 of the movie is spent at the Aquacade, which I was not anticipating, and enjoyed in a way that, like, the movie just kind of totally went off the rails in a fun way at that point.
Yeah.
But no water skiing with Jamie Lee Curtis.
So yeah, like I said, it's funny because for this episode to prep for it, I was like, okay, I've got time to watch like 2 body swapping movies here. And I was like, I could go both Freaky Friday, but I was like, no, I'm gonna go original Jodie Foster. So I pulled it up, watched it, and I actually ended up enjoying it way more than I thought I was going to. It's actually this really charming movie. And Caroline, you shared on Twitter, I think it was yesterday, a screenshot of the opening credits, and it's Jodie. What I learned afterwards is it's Jodie Foster and Barbara Harris, who plays her mom in the movie, and they're actually singing the theme music to Freaky Friday. I think it's called like I Wish I Could Be You for a Day or something like that. And it's so funny because the one thing I found with a lot of these movies is like, and especially these ones too, where we see kids becoming like, obviously the adults having to act as a kid, a lot of the movie rests on that performance by more so the the adult having to act like the kid than vice versa. And Barbara Harris did a great job of kind of playing up kind of like the tomboy Jodie Foster Annabelle character in this movie. And it was just, honestly, it was a fun watch. And I've been, as I mentioned, I was sick this past week, so it was a good way to relax.
There were lots of great performances in both of the movies. I also really enjoyed Freaky, the 2020 horror movie starring Vince Vaughn and Catherine Newton. Have either of you seen Freaky?
No.
I'm aware of it. I didn't realize until I was doing a little bit of research for this episode that it's actually a body swapping movie, though.
It totally is a body swapping movie. Many ways closer to what the genre became than the original Freaky Friday. The original Freaky Friday, so we've got Jodie Foster and Barbara Harris. Basically, they just say at the same time, "I wish I was you," and then it swaps, and that's it. There's like no problematically culturally insensitive manner in which the swap is explained. That was something that I had a lot of tired sighs while watching the Jamie Lee Curtis, Lindsay Lohan movie where it involves a fortune cookie and a Chinese restaurant and a gong sound effect, and it's not good. It's not the look for this, but is part of a tradition of other culture being used as an explanation for this body swap. In Freaky, it has to do with a dagger from an ancient Spanish civilization, where Vince Vaughn, who is a serial killer called the Butcher, is attempting to murder high school students. What I loved about Freaky was it did not spend time on plot. It just dropped you right in on what you needed to know, which was that Vince Vaughn is a serial killer. He's trying to kill Millie. It's interrupted. He doesn't kill her, and because of the rules of the ancient Spanish dagger, they now have switched bodies for a day, but if they don't kill each other at the end of the day, they will stay in their other bodies. So then the rest of the movie, the next day they wake up, the body of the 17, 18-year-old girl is now the serial killer inside. So she's kind of like lumbering around the house trying to like lunge for kitchen knives and different things. And the body of the Butcher, who is Vince Vaughn, is now a 17-year-old girl who is like freaking out because everything is just wild. And so they're after him, who's really her. It's funny. It's action based. It does not spend a lot of time getting hung up on itself. And I really enjoyed it. So check out Freaky. Original title, I believe they wanted to call it Freaky Friday the 13th, which would pretty much sum up what was happening in that movie. The late 1980s was the peak for father-son body swapping titles. Like Father, Like Son, Vice Versa, and 18 Again were all released in 1987 and 1988. Why do you think these titles were really resonating then?
I kind of feel like I'm like the resident expert on this question.
Please,
as a kid at this time, it's funny because I mentioned earlier, I watched 2 body swapping movies to prepare for this episode. The second one I watched was the 1988 film Vice Versa, starring Judge Reinhold and Fred Savage. It was a movie that I liked as a kid. I was like, hey, let's go back and explore this one. Caroline, you mentioned a little while ago talking about how there's like how they swap bodies basically, and they're in the remake to Freaky Friday, how there's this like weird Asian
It's not
thing.
okay.
Yeah, and this one has a very similar one too. Basically, Judge Reinhold is this big executive for, it's kind of like a Macy's type department store. They go to Thailand. When he's in Thailand, he accidentally brings back this like artifact where him and his son touch it at the same time, and as they're arguing about, you know, who has the easier life and that sort of thing, and of course then they switch bodies and that sort of thing. So that movie also kind of has that, you know, that culturally insensitive part of it. But getting past that though, this is a fun movie though. And the whole reason why I think I had to look this up, but like we're talking about 1987 and 88, we got 3 of these movies coming out. The only thing I could really think of was it was kind of like this whole, the 80s was like the decade of like the yuppies. So it's like the young urban professional. It was all about, you know, think of the movie Wall Street in a way, kind of Gordon Gekko. It's like make as much money as you can, as fast as you can, got to climb the corporate ladder. So I have not seen 18 again, but I have seen like Father Like Son. And I believe in that one, Dudley Moore actually plays a doctor. So it's a little bit different. But for vice versa, though, I mean, to me, it all makes sense because you have Judge Reinhold, who has like no time for his son, played by Fred Savage. And of course, Fred Savage is into rock music and dad isn't. And he just wants to spend time with him, but he's got these big meetings coming up and all of this other stuff. So I really think like at the time, especially in the 80s here, like it made sense for these kind of movies to be coming out, and especially to where with vice versa, just to kind of, you know, thinking of Judge Reinhold's character, kind of like, you know, sometimes you got to slow things down, appreciate the things you got, and that sort of thing. So, yeah, I think that's totally the message that they're going for with definitely the 80s ones anyway, where it was more based around like father and son anyway. Have either of you seen either of those movies?
Holly?
Holly?
No, I haven't seen either of those movies. This question feels like a test that I did not study for, but this is not a dream. I'm here.
and you're okay.
And I'm okay.
Yeah, it's fine. I think I saw Vice Versa ages ago, probably on like Disney Channel or Family Channel as a kid. I did in before today watch 18 again, which we have streaming. You can watch it on Hoopla, and it's George Burns is the grandfather, and Charlie Schlatter is 18, freshman in college, and not really having the greatest time. And it's George Burns. I mean, I could call him, I think he's Jack in the movie, but it's George Burns.
It's Burns. Yeah.
That's by the time they do get to the body swap, and the spirit of George Burns is in his grandson, it's really just Charlie Schlatter, the actor, doing a George Burns impression for a good chunk of the movie. But it kind of comes and goes, and it's not really where you would expect it from it. It's that's pretty much it, what the movie is. I was reading a review of it that said audiences were upset because they went into it thinking it was a George Burns picture, which it is, but then his body character is in a coma for most of the movie. And so the character, he's doing a voiceover of the inner thoughts, but it's the outside of the 18-year-old. So I'm just picturing all of these like angry moviegoers in 1987, 88, like rioting that there wasn't enough George Burns in their movie.
We need more George Burns. That's what the public wanted.
So this one, what it had going for it was kind of similar to the original Freaky Friday. The method that they swap bodies involved just holding hands and driving through a glass window. That's all they needed to do. Well, there was also like a birthday wish involved, but like there was no cursed objects. That was, and how they do it the second time to switch back, I did not see coming until I did, but it was It was well done. This is the one where, as the 18-year-old college student who's really the 81-year-old business tycoon guy, as they, for lack of a better pronoun, are wooing the college guy's crush, that's where I started thinking about some of these like consent issues, and identity as well. You know, if you're outside, appears one way, but is inside. I mean, in Freaky, there are murders being committed. You know, is it the consciousness that would go to jail, or the body? I don't know. I kind of wanted to see, I mean, I would love to see maybe a short film or something about like lawyers in a world like this trying to determine who is legally responsible for actions that carried out during a body swap.
Yeah, and it's funny you bring that up, because the one common thread I have noticed in a lot of these movies is there's always at least one scene where it's kind of like, this is getting a bit inappropriate. Like, even in the original Freaky Friday, there's a scene where, of course, Jodie Foster's character has a crush on this kid Boris next, or lives across the street. So after she does the swap with her mom's at home, and she's bored. Like, she's whatever, the place is a mess, she doesn't care, whatever. So she calls this kid over, which is already highly inappropriate, and she's trying to think of ways to get him to come over to spend time with her. So she calls him, he comes over, and then they go out for a walk and they're bonding. It's just really kind of creepy. And then they kind of have this look with each other. He's like trying to show her how to throw like a boomerang at one point, and it looks like they're going to kiss, but thankfully, like, I think it's Boris is the kid is the one to be like, oh, I should probably be going now. And we see that you see that in Vice Versa. And I know there's kind of a similar scene in like Father, Like Son as well. So I know they're played for laughs, but when you watch it, it's just kind of like, ugh, this isn't too good.
I was thinking in terms of the late 80s, how there's a lot of movies that I really enjoyed from this time period, and you know, the body swapping is an interesting aspect of it, but it's like there's a lot of interest in family dynamic and family relations. So thinking about, you know, Home Alone, the kid is in charge. Parents are away, parents didn't do their job, like, and that sort of swap that happens in that environment. In the Terminator series, you know, the robot is first kind of the in charge and kind of, you know, trying to wipe out humanity, and then becomes kind of a father figure, and that there's like a real swap and this interest in sort of family relations and kids being in charge. Even like Ferris Bueller's Day Off, there's a little bit of a like swap of like who's making decisions, who's guiding the day, what's right and what's wrong. So yeah, I thought it was interesting because a lot of movies that I really connect with from that period, really, they're really interested in this question of like family dynamics and making changes to those family dynamic situations.
Mm-hmm. So we've mentioned some already, but do any other body swapping movies or storylines really stand out to you, Caroline?
My initial reaction was there has to be something in Star Trek. And there kind of is. I'm going to talk maybe a little bit more later on about it, but there is an episode of the original series, Star Trek the original series, that has Captain Kirk body swapping with Dr. Janice Lester. It's called Turnabout Intruder, and it is famously the last episode that ever aired of the original Star Trek series. It is wild as an episode. You've got William Shatner kind of camping it up as a woman playing a man, playing Kirk, all of these elements in it. He immediately acts in ways that draw everyone's suspicions. Like, he hasn't, like, it's been like half an hour and he is ordering the execution of his crew member, his best friends, and people are kind of like, this is weird. Until it's like, all right, fine. He's diagnosed with hysteria, be, as this who is it? Scotty has the line, I think, of I've seen him happy, I've seen him angry, I've seen him in war, but I've never seen him like this, hysterical, because he's a woman, really, but they don't really know that. So Turnabout Intruder, I just like it's one of the episodes I think you have to like experience to really understand.
Yeah. Holly, was there any other body swapping titles that stood out for you?
Yeah, so interestingly, I also wondered as soon as the topic came up about Star Trek, and there was an episode of Voyager that I recalled where I think Robert Picardo, the holographic doctor, and Seven of Nine, the EMH, sort of swap, or it's more of a kind of download and takeover situation. So that one's just interesting because those are two, I think, really like Robert Picardo's performance in Voyager is a pretty bombastic performance. And so to see the actress Jerry Ryan kind of take that on, it's also one of those episodes where we've talked a little bit about some of the like icky kind of consent type of things that pop up in some of these stories. And I think that's unfortunately something that happens in this one, but that was an interesting, I think that's the episode Body and Soul. So that one popped into mind for me. I also went back into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, into the
Nice.
1987 cartoon series, and there's an episode called The Old Switcheroo. And can you guess what happens in this episode?
Well, one came to my mind, but I don't think it's the. Is this the one where Casey Jones goes to work for Shredder?
That's a great guess, but no. So there is that one. There is a switch with Casey Jones, I think, and I can't remember who else, but another one. This is another one, and basically, okay. So let me set the scene for you. First of all, the turtles have built a pizza making machine, like a giant pizza making robot. It blows up. This has no bearing on the rest of the plot, but I think it's important to shine a light on that because that would be an amazing machine. Basically, Splinter goes along with the turtles to some kind of a weird factory where Shredder and the gang are, and there's some kind of, again, a big machine that basically blows up. So I guess they foreshadowed that with the pizza machine, and Splinter and Shredder swap consciousnesses, and it's very interesting because they both immediately like try to decide that they're going to try to pass it off as, oh yeah, I'm going to have to act as Shredder, I'm going to have to act as Splinter, and find out more about the situation and maybe get some help. One of the things that made me laugh so hard about this episode is that immediately, you'd think that Shredder, he can finally get back into the turtles' lair and destroy them, but he doesn't do that. He immediately just starts making them practice their martial arts and do their chores, and then he's like, and now I'll finally destroy them after this. Ultimately, what gives him away as well is the turtles get some pizza and he chows down on some pizza, and that's the moment where his cover is blown. Like there's been some incidences leading up to that where they're a little suspicious just because he doesn't seem to be himself. But yeah, that's where he really blows his cover, because I guess according to the lore of the series, Splinter's not that into pizza. I don't know why anybody wouldn't be, but yeah.
There was
So
that viral video a few years ago, that giant rat in New York City with the whole piece
Pizza
of
rat.
pizza. Yeah, clearly
yeah.
they didn't do their homework.
Yeah, so that one really stuck out to me.
That's interesting because that I believe that when we first started talking about this episode idea, I mentioned in that meeting that I happen to think that I would be very good at a body swap because I would not try to make my personality, Caroline's internal personality, the dominant one. And that is I don't know if it's a mistake, but it's a choice that almost everyone in the body swapping makes. Like when Lindsay Lohan, the character of Anna, is really her mother, she goes around acting like like everybody's mother, and you just kind of have to play it a little bit quieter, a little bit cooler, not make as many like sweeping statements about assuming you're going to live that person's life better than they are. I just think I'm really well suited to a successful secret body swap.
You're like, I'm mentally prepared
There
for it.
aren't a lot of there are not a lot of situations, including movie ones. I remember the episode where it's like, who would you outlast, like Freddy or Jason? And I'm like,
Mhm.
no, I'm going first. Let's be honest on these. This, however, I believe is a scenario where I might do well.
Well, even too with the original Freaky Friday that I watched, where they go out for they start off their morning and the swap happens, and I'm just watching this and I'm like, okay, mom, you're in the body of your daughter Jodie Foster, and she's out and about. I'm like, something's wrong. Why aren't you just going home? Like, why are you
Mhm.
still you know trying to go to school and do all this other stuff? Like, you guys can easily get this back on track. Just go home.
Just go home.
Just go. That's all you
Don't
got to
talk
do.
to people. Just like hang out.
Yeah,
Tell, but then they wouldn't get to the
exactly.
message of uh in the Freaky Friday, in the mother daughter ones, I think it's more kind of respecting that the other person does,
Hmm.
whereas I do think in the father son ones or the grandfather son ones, there's a key point in there where George Burns learns that his grandson doesn't want to be a businessman, doesn't want to be the carbon copy of the grandfather and the father. He wants to be an artist, he wants to be his own man. That the father son ones, I think, are a bit more about like spending time and seeing each other
Hmm.
as that family. But yeah, no, close the door, shut the windows, calm down, you'll get through it.
That's right.
You're proposing more along the lines of the film Face Off, where Nicolas Cage's character like really, really tries to work that aspect of blending in, fitting in, advancing his evil plots and goals as he's filling in
Castor
for,
Troy.
yeah, the John Travolta character. This is my thesis that Face Off is a body swapping movie, not a face swapping movie.
I
That was in my email, and it was one of these where it's like a literal body swap
Mhm.
of actually switching out your body.
Yeah. And by the way, I've mentioned this podcast before, but if you get a chance, speaking of the movie Face Off, go listen to the Face Off episode of How Did This Get Made? It is one of the most hilarious podcast episodes you'll ever listen to. Like, they share some behind the scenes details of the movie. There's a tie into the original Super Mario Brothers movie even. It's hilarious. Go, if you're a fan of the cheesiness of Face Off, you'll really enjoy this podcast episode.
I also wanted to talk briefly about some of the variations on body swapping. So we have the literal body swap of Face Off, but there's also waking up as an older or younger version of you. Movies like 13 Going on 30 or Big might fit those. And then the reality swapping, which is a term I might have invented to refer to where you're the same, but you wake up in an alternate reality and everyone thinks that you're a different version of you. So it's your body, your thoughts, but a different world where people recognize you as someone else. Either of you have any favorite variations or examples of these that you've enjoyed?
So I was actually going to ask you about this one, Caroline. So what would be an example of a reality swapping one?
This is the one that came to mind for me would be is it The Family Man? The Nicolas Cage
Mhm.
again comes up a lot in these kind of alternate reality movies, but you see it more often, I think, in a lot of holiday stories where the hero or the heroine kind of see the life not taken. In Family Man, I think he sees, instead of, if he, in his reality, he's a successful businessman, at least successful in the world of business, but his life is kind of cold and empty. And he wakes up, he's married to Taya Leone, who was his high school, or old sweetheart. They have kids, probably a dog in there, and it's a very different life that at first he kind of does not understand why he's made these choices in this alternate reality, but then comes to see how much he might be missing out on in his other world. And you see that usually around a holiday story, often with, the big city heroine going home to a small town in some way, and kind of seeing that, she's hit on the head and wakes up and she's married to her high school sweetheart and has this alternate life that she doesn't remember but seems to suit her really well. So that's one where you're the same, but everyone sees you as part of a different reality.
Yes, gotcha. Yeah, no, it's funny. I did have Family Man on my list as well, and yeah, it's a great Christmas movie. We're into that season already, and but yeah, very similar to those '80s ones where Nicolas Cage plays this kind of, I think he's like a stockbroker or something, and he of course like is living the ultimate playboy lifestyle. And yeah, you're right, Caroline, he kind of wakes up one day and he is working at his father-in-law's like auto parts supply store, I think it is, and he could not have a more different lifestyle. Basically, he's going around from driving like a Porsche or something like that to having like one car and worrying about like mortgage payments and, paying all the bills, and it's just a completely different lifestyle. But yeah, it's a great movie though. And the one for me though that really stood out, and you touched on already though, is Big, because while yeah, it's not necessarily, Tom Hanks isn't switching bodies with somebody else, but we get to take a look at Josh Baskin from when I think he's like 13 or something like that in the movie. And then of course he wakes up, or he makes his wish and he wakes up and he's in an adult's body. And of course it gets like, we talk about stuff that gets inappropriate or really weird, and it's almost like that first scene where he, of course, like he wakes up and he's in like his like 13-year-old like underwear, and of course mom comes in and is like, oh, like what the hell are you doing? And he's like, Mom, it's me. And of course like he can't explain it properly, so there's lots of like, there's definitely some weird stuff going on there too. And of course he has the relationship with the coworker as well at the toy manufacturer that he works for. Little side note, I remember watching this movie as a kid and I was like, I want Josh Baskin's job when I get older. I want to work for like a toy manufacturer. That looks really fun. But no, that's another great movie though.
Mm-hmm. Holly, what about you?
I say that, one of my favorite recent takes on this, and forgive me again, I can't seem to stop talking about Star Trek, particularly when Caroline is around. But there's a few examples that pop to mind. I think Star Trek Discovery, the recent series, does a really great job of the whole alternate universe piece. Like, I think maybe the best that of the Star Treks, and I know this is a bit of a controversial take if my brother's listening to this, but I think in the way that the different characters are used and how they show up, how you think things are going in the first season, and then towards the end of that season, how things actually develop and how the mirror universe is involved. I think it's really well deployed. It's really interesting. I also think it reminds me a lot of the Golden Compass series by Philip Pullman, and there's sort of an alternate. There's an aspect to that story that becomes, especially in the later books, about slipping between different versions of the same universe, and I really love that part of it. I think there's so much that's good in the first book, and the first book is so iconic, but the whole, tears between these different universes and people finding themselves in a similar similar enough universe that's just to a step to the side, and that sort of whole fish out of water aspect to that. I really love that dynamic in sci-fi or fantasy as well. So yeah, those are a few that popped out to me. Caroline, you mentioned waking up as an older or younger version of you. I mean, another method for that is transporter accident. There's the iconic Next Generation episode Rascals, where Guinan, Picard, and Rolaren. Oh, there, yeah, Caroline's holding up her notes page. Things are underlined. And I just think that is also a great episode, even though it's not necessarily waking up as, but it's definitely, you have a transporter beam, you think everything's going to plan, and then boom, you're a kid again. And just the whole way that allows the characters to kind of reconnect with that version of themselves, that younger version of themselves, and work through some aspects that maybe are unresolved. As well, the ship has been taken over once again due to lax security procedures, I guess. So the whole way that they have to navigate that situation is really fun.
I definitely wanted to talk about Rascals. I think you bring it out in me as well, Holly. My Star Trek fandom. What stood out when I was thinking about it this time is this idea of particularly Captain Picard, who is in the body of a tween, basically a boy, but it's his brain. It's the adult Picard's brain, and the decisions that he's making, the thoughts that he's having are technically the same that would have been, the Picard of the day before or 2 days ago when he was in his adult body, but nobody wants to take orders from this 12-year-old, and even the ones who logically understand it are it's kind of weird. So then what do you do with this? And there's a scene where he's kind of being counseled around, like, what is he going to do with his life if he really is having these kind of 2 lifetimes worth of experiences. But that's where I think I started thinking about, this split between body and mind, and how it's separate and the same, and how people interact with you affects who you are, but then it's also independent of that. And there's just a lot of really interesting stuff happening in Rascals, and you can quote me on that.
So definitely check it out. Official recommendation to check out the episode Rascals, Star Trek The Next Generation.
Yeah, Bryce, I'm not sure how big of a Star Trek The Next Generation fan you are, but coming out this hard for Rascals is kind of a controversial stance.
Clearly.
Yeah, it's not necessarily one that's well thought of by parts of the fandom. But
were there any other variation titles that caught your eye, Caroline?
No, Rascals was the
Rascals
main
was
one
that
I
it?
wanted to talk about. I did want to say that one of the things I like about 13 going on 30 is the slight plot variation where she wakes up, her body has changed, but also she's in the future. So it's not a lot of times, like thinking of like the inverse of that, 17 again, the one with Matthew Perry and Zac Efron, he kind of like ages down in that moment, but her reality, people she knew as children are also now adults with her, and is navigating a whole different world as well as a whole different body. And so that was, I think, an interesting thing when I'm kind of looking at all of these as a genre, an interesting thing that 13 going on 30 does. So our first roundtable question, I had to go with this one when I was putting the notes together. I had to ask, who would you like to swap places with, Freaky Friday style, for a day? Holly, we'll start with you.
This is actually a very hard question, Caroline. I ended up landing on Sue Bird, the famous WNBA basketball player. I think Sue Bird has had like such an amazing career, and just to be able to borrow her jump shot for a day, I think would be incredible. um, I don't know. It is a good question. Like, would I be able to call on muscle memory, or would Sue Bird just have an off jump shot the day that happened? It's tough to say. I don't know how much she'd enjoy coordinating a makerspace at a public library, but maybe she'd find it interesting. So that's my answer, Sue Bird.
I really love this answer, Holly, because my answer, and sorry for jumping in here,
No.
Bryce, is my answer is Connor McDavid. And it's not because I think I would have a good day living his life. It's probably wild, with all of his like exercising and moving about and having to do like press and everything. The pressure, I don't need that. I just couldn't stop laughing at the idea of him like looking up circulation reports. That's I just love it. But then I was like, oh, but like if that was a movie, it would still be my body. And so it was never as funny as it is in my mind. Picture like Connor McDavid library manager.
So, Caroline, we had the same answer. I also went with Connor McDavid for mine. More so because, and kind of back to Holly's answer here, like more so just to kind of experience what it would be like to actually play in an NHL game. But I would want to know though, yeah, like do I have his abilities, or is it like a case of like he goes out on the ice for warm up and it's like my abilities and he has like the worst game of his entire life and people wonder if he's okay. So as long as I could have his abilities, it would be really cool to like be able to skate that fast and that sort of thing, and just kind of see what that would be like for a day to experience an NHL game. He would probably be really bored, kind of living my lifestyle of just working from home, basically working at my kitchen table for a day. He'd be like, I cannot wait to get back to the NHL.
I know very little about Connor McDavid actually, but I do not imagine he sits down as much as like I might in a day. Our job involves a lot of sitting.
It really does. Yeah, he would probably not be impressed by our lifestyles, I'm guessing.
Or he'd be
But
like, I've never been able to send emails with such quickness and facility.
That's
Like,
right.
this must be what it's like to be a champion office worker.
that would be the tip off that it's
Yeah.
not me. The emails are being sent too quickly to
Yeah.
people. The responses are flying
Yeah.
around. But that's interesting. And as much as like I am laughing because I still find this very funny. The question of like where do abilities live? Is that
Mhm.
the body? Is that the person? Is it separate? Can you take it with you? All of this fascinating. I would love to see like I say, a legal thing where they sit down and sort this all out. Okay, so we know it's branch manager McDavid and not Caroline, because the emails are going too quickly. But what is something about you that would probably tip people off, a la the shredder pizza move, if you've been body swapped? Holly?
Well, I had to think carefully about this question, and I think maker spaces, they're dynamic spaces. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of projects going on, there's a lot of equipment. So they're a continual struggle against entropy, which is a state of chaos. And so I think that you could really be tipped off if you saw my workspace and it was tidy and well organized. I think that would be a real flag that maybe something was amiss. Typically, I have pieces of equipment that we're looking at. Does it need to be repaired? Does it need to be sent out for assessment? Those sorts of things. There's lots of weird 3D prints and test objects on my desk. So I think a tidy workspace would be a sign that you might want to check out if it's really me.
That's a good one. Bryce, how about you?
Well, you can tell I've been involved in a body swap if you see me and there is any kind of singing or dancing going on. Like if I'm clearly having a good time doing that sort of thing, especially dancing, just, yeah, confront body swap me and be like, hey, I know what's going on. Let's get things back on track here. The real Bryce would never do this.
Yeah. For me, I think the tip would be that I'm in the other person's body. They're not who they are because they are terrible at driving. I hate driving. I do not remember the last time I did it. I am not good at it. I avoid it at all times, and most other people drive. So it would probably come up in a situation where I'm living someone else's life, and I don't know how well it would go, which is a pretty typical Freaky Friday thing of usually an underage teenage girl not being able to drive, but in this case it's someone in her late 30s, let's be honest, but who otherwise would be very good at a body swap.
So if we see you doing like donuts in the parking lot or something, we know it's something's up.
Connor McDavid's on the number 5 bus. That's giving away the game right there.
Yeah.
Holly, thank you so much for joining us today. I really enjoyed talking about all of these things with you. It was wonderful having you on the show again.
Thanks so much, Caroline. And Caroline, I'd like to mention to your listeners that we have an amazing service at the Milner Makerspace that I'd love for people to check out. We have a vinyl cutter and a heat press, and the staff will train you how to use it. The training is free. The materials are low cost. You can use it to make customized decals or t-shirts. So if you want to make your, Star Trek The Next Generation Rascals, the episode fan t-shirt, the Makerspace can help you out with that. But really, it's a great service. The staff are so good working with people and helping them bring their projects to life. And there's a lot of ideas that people have for, gifts or other things that might be coming up that they can use these services for. So please check out the vinyl cutting and the heat press at the Milner Makerspace.
It's a great idea, Holly. Especially we hear in the news right now about a lot of like supply chain issues and everything, and holidays are coming up. So this might be the year to make family and friends some gifts. And Holly and her team will have lots of ideas for that.
Great. So we'll have a link to all the information. You can find it all on our website, but we'll have that link in our show notes for today. We hope you've enjoyed today's episode. Make sure that you're subscribed so that you automatically get new episodes. Please also leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We love getting reviews. And if you like what you hear or what you've heard, tell a friend about the show.
Don't forget that we'll have a link to everything that we talked about in today's show notes. If you want to share your favorite body swapping titles with us, email us at podcast@epl.ca or hit us up on Twitter by using the hashtag EPL Overdue Finds. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.